Take a moment and truly let this sink in. 67% of Americans worry more about running out of money than they do about dying. According to the 2026 Alliance Life Study, this fear isn't just some fleeting, passing thought. It is a profound, paralyzing anxiety that completely dominates the later years of life. Just think about what that actually means for a second. The fear of outliving your wealth, of becoming a burden to your family, of watching your life savings slowly, painfully drain away to zero, is mathematically and psychologically more terrifying to most people than the actual end of life itself. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't just about not saving enough during your career. No, it is often about a fundamental misunderstanding of how the system is wired. Because the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed, to quietly drain your savings if you don't understand the mechanics of the decumulation phase.
Welcome to USA Rift. In this explainer, we are exposing the decumulation trap and revealing the hidden defenses of the wealthy. Today, we are moving far past basic budgeting. We are doing a deep dive into the structural, almost invisible challenges of retirement withdrawal. We're going to expose the brutal math that catches so many people completely off guard right at the finish line. And more importantly, we are going to break down the exact defensive architectures that insiders use to shield their money from market volatility, crippling inflation, and portfolio decay. This is your blueprint. Let's get into it. For your entire working life, you've essentially been playing one single game: accumulation. You earn, you save, you invest. And through it all, you rely on the absolute psychological safety net of a paycheck. Every 2 weeks, new money replenishes your account. If the stock market crashes while you're in your 40s, you don't panic, right? You just buy more on sale. But the very second you retire, the rules of the entire game reverse. You enter the decumulation phase. The biweekly paycheck stops forever. That comforting phrase we all use, well, we can always make more money. It just doesn't apply anymore. Now, every single withdrawal you make just to pay for groceries, or keep the lights on, or buy medication, it feels like a permanent deduction. It requires a brutal psychological recalibration. You see, a lifelong accumulator doesn't just flip a switch and magically become a confident decumulator.
Section 1. The decumulation trap.
Decumulation is an incredibly complex psychological state. Think about it. For 40 years, your entire identity was wrapped up in being a saver. It was a status that brought you comfort, pride, and a sense of security. But now you have to shift to being a spender. And to the human brain, that suddenly feels wildly risky. This right here is the decumulation trap. Because of this fear, retirees often find themselves hoarding money they absolutely should be using to enjoy their final decades. They sit in small apartments, terrified to travel, obsessively tracking every micro fluctuation of the stock market on their phones. Why? Because they've completely shifted their benchmark. They are no longer focused on funding a fulfilling, comfortable life. Instead, their entire existence becomes about protecting the absolute high watermark of their account balance. It is a mathematical anxiety that eats away at you every single day. Let's look at the numbers from that Alliance study, because we need to dissect this with extreme granularity. Look at these structural threats. 57% of people are consumed by anxiety over market drops. Another 57% are absolutely terrified of high inflation, that silent, invisible tax that erodes your purchasing power day by day, year by year. And then 53% are lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, worrying about healthcare costs, which only accelerate the older and more vulnerable we get. Let that sink in. More than half the country is living in a state of constant red alert financial panic during the exact years they were promised peace and relaxation.
And here is how the trap actually springs shut on the middle class. Because 48% of people do not have a written financial plan, they act purely on raw emotion. When the market inevitably drops, logic goes out the window. Anxiety takes the wheel. 34% of people, that is more than 1 in 3 retirees, absolutely panic. They log into their brokerage accounts and pull their money out of the market just to stop the pain. They are trying to cap their losses, but what they are actually doing is selling at the exact bottom. By acting on fear, they permanently lock in those losses. They permanently impair their portfolio's ability to ever recover and generate future income. They are quite literally outmaneuvered by their own psychology. To navigate this system, you need to see the truth of how it operates. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment on what you thought so far. If you want to arm yourself against these structural traps, support the channel by becoming a channel member. Let's keep exposing how this works.
Section 2. The sequence of returns threat. Now we need to talk about the invisible math that wipes out retirees. It's called the sequence of returns risk. This is the catastrophic danger of a market crash happening right at the starting line of your retirement. Let's walk through the exact math, painfully, step by step. Imagine you retire with exactly $1 million. You did everything right. But in year one, the market crashes and your portfolio drops 20%. You are instantly down to $800,000. But remember, the paycheck is gone. You still have to pay property taxes. You still have to buy food. So you withdraw $50,000 to live on. Now your portfolio is at $750,000. The bleeding has started. In year 5, the economy is sluggish, the market is stagnant, but you are still withdrawing that $50,000 a year. Because your balance is so low, you are forced to sell off a massive number of shares at heavily depressed prices just to cover your basic living expenses. By year 10, the stock market might finally recover. It might even go on a massive historic bull run. But for you, it's too late. You don't have enough shares left in your account to capture that growth. You hollowed out the core of your nest egg. Now, if that exact same market crash had happened in year 10 instead of year 1, your portfolio would have had a full decade to compound, and you would have easily survived the drop. The system doesn't care about the average of your returns. The sequence of your returns is what determines if you survive.
Section 3. The Guardrail Defense.
So how do the wealthy survive this? They don't rely on hope. They use insider defense mechanisms. One of the most powerful is the Guyton-Kinger guardrail system. Think of this as dynamic, mathematical armor for your money. Here are the mechanics. Step 1. You set an initial withdrawal rate of roughly 5%. So on $1 million portfolio, that's $50,000 a year. Step 2. You increase that specific amount annually to match inflation, keeping your real-world purchasing power perfectly intact. But step 3 is where this strategy truly creates a fortress. You set rigid, emotionless, mathematical guardrails to adjust for massive market swings. It completely removes human panic from the equation. 20%. I want you to keep that exact number in your head. In the Guyton-Kinger system, if your overall portfolio drops by 20% due to a sudden market crash, a trigger is pulled. An absolute non-negotiable rule goes into effect. You must permanently decrease your spending by 10%. It is the mathematical emergency triage required to stop the bleeding and save the portfolio from going to zero. Let's dissect this framework, because the discipline it demands is incredible. Look at the table. If the market goes on a massive bull run and your portfolio grows by 20%, you hit what is called the upper guardrail. The system grants you a reward. You are mathematically permitted to increase your spending by 10%. Go take that vacation, upgrade the car. But if the market drops 20%, hitting your lower guardrail, you must take the guardrail action. You instantly decrease your spending by 10%. This is where the psychological discipline comes in. You are forcing yourself to take a pay cut today when the market is down so that you are not forced to sell your investments at rock-bottom clearance rack prices. You suffer a little bit right now to ensure you survive tomorrow. It is a self-correcting, almost bulletproof blueprint.
Section 4. Shielding your wealth. Now we pivot to the structural architectures that protect your remaining assets. This is mental accounting totally weaponized. It's called the retirement bucket strategy. Instead of one giant terrifying pool of money that bounces up and down with the news cycle, you split your life savings into 3 distinct highly regulated silos. Your short-term bucket holds nothing but pure cash, exactly enough to cover 1 to 2 years of immediate living expenses. Your intermediate bucket holds bonds and fixed income. This is designed to weather the midterm economic storms of years 3 through 7. And finally, your long-term bucket is heavily invested in equities. It is designed purely for growth to outpace inflation over the next 20 years. So why is this specific architecture so incredibly powerful? Because when the stock market inevitably crashes, you don't care. You don't panic. You just live off the cash in your short-term bucket. You let the long-term equities bleed, recover, and eventually grow, completely untouched. You shift your mindset from red alert stress to golden, unshakable confidence.
But the market isn't the only threat. There's also the government. When you turn 73, the IRS steps in and changes the rules. They force you to take what's called required minimum distributions, or RMDs, from your traditional IRA or 401k. They literally force you to pull your money out into the open and pay heavy taxes on it, even if you don't need a single dime of it to live. To combat this wealth drain, insiders utilize a highly specialized legal shield, the QLAC, the Qualified Longevity Annuity Contract. By transferring funds from your IRA directly into a QLAC, you legally shield that money from the mandatory RMD calculation. You defer the income and you defer the taxes until you actually need the money, delaying it all the way up to age 85. $210,000. That is the exact simplified maximum lifetime funding limit you can currently lock away inside a QLAC, established by the Secure 2.0 Act. You can take up to $210,000 of your pre-tax retirement money and pull it completely off the table, away from the government's immediate reach. Let's obsess over the micro details of this Fidelity case study to see the true power of this shield. Imagine a woman, age 70. She takes that maximum limit, $210,000, and she locks it inside a QLAC. She chooses to defer her income until age 80. For 10 straight years, that money is legally invisible to the IRS's mandatory RMDs. Then, at exactly age 80, the QLAC activates. It springs to life. It begins paying her a guaranteed $36,537 every single year. It does not matter if the stock market crashes by 50%. It does not matter if there is a global recession. That exact income is guaranteed by contract. If she lives to age 95, she will have received over $548,000 in payouts from a single $210,000 investment. It acts as the ultimate bulletproof insurance policy against the terrifying reality of outliving your wealth. Now, I want you to pause and ask yourself a very difficult, very uncomfortable question. Will your financial standing be as strong 20 years from now as it is today? When your physical health inevitably changes, when those healthcare costs hit their absolute punishing peak, will your portfolio survive the drain? Because without a dynamic guardrail system in place, without weaponized mental accounting buckets, and without a strict strategy for shielding your later in life income, you might just be stepping into the decumulation phase without a safety net. But you don't have to be caught off guard by the math. You can build the architecture. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment on what you thought. And if you're serious about mastering this system, support the channel by becoming a channel member. Implementing strategies like guardrails, bucket systems, and targeted annuities requires intense intention and planning. But doing so fundamentally shifts the odds of survival back in your favor. It transforms retirement from a period of constant, grinding anxiety into a true phase of unshakable security. Think about everything we just uncovered in this explainer. The sheer, compounding destruction of sequence of returns risk, the emotional trap that leads to panic selling at the absolute bottom, the forced, taxable distributions from the government. What if outliving your money isn't just an inevitability, but simply a math problem that you now have the exact blueprint to solve? You have the tools now. You see the mechanics. And the worst part, most people will never realize it.